Hey guys, Andrew here from the Loaded Dice podcast, and I'm here doing our first hobby tip video for everybody. We put a post up on the Facebook group and just sort of said to people, what sort of hobby tips are you looking to find out? Something to try out on miniatures you've gotten for Christmas or those sort of things. And the one that popped up more than anything else was decals, also known as transfers, waterslide transfers, depending on what part of the world you're in, how old you are, and the rest of it. So what we're talking about are these things. Hopefully the camera is pretty good there. This is the Imperial Fist decal sheet from Forge World. I've also got a copy of the Death Guard decal sheet there from Forge World. These things are absolutely amazing. I've got a ton of these. I've got some World Eater ones, which I think are somewhere else around this house. Now, what I'm going to do is run through what you need to decal miniatures, and then I'll take you through a step-by-step of how to decal a miniature. And this is not just chucking it in water and making it stick to it. There's a bit more involved in it. This is also the only way you can realistically, with any sort of consistency, decal Space Marine shoulder pads. So if you've ever wondered how to do that, this is a video for you guys. So look, I'm just going to run through a few things first that you need for it. So we've talked about the decal sheets here. You need one of these. The little ones you get in Kauth and Prospero work, even the really old ones out of Tactical Squad box sets. It just depends on what you want to put on. Then you need the two secret ingredients. Now, I use these guys. I use Mr. Mark Softener and Mr. Mark Setter. Now these products are Mr. Hobby products. Generally you see them with Tamiya sort of things. They're for military models. You can also use Microsol and Microset. So Microset's the same as Mr. Mark Setter, and Microsol's the same as the softener. So it's just a solvent and a setting solution. I've always preferred these ones because they have their own little brush on the inside of the cap there. If you can sort of see that. Got a brush on it, which means you're not using a paintbrush or anything. You get an absolute ton of it in this. I think it's 40 mils. I've decaled a lot of stuff and it's hardly used. Microsol's about the same sort of price. It's about $10 a bottle here in Australia, I think. I think you can order it over eBay for about $7 from Hong Kong. I just prefer these because they work as well as the Microsol and the Microset, and you get the little brush. So either product is good. They do the same thing. The next thing you need is obviously a miniature. So this is actually one of Steve's guys I'm painting for Acta Heresy at the end of January down in Canberra. If you can see him here, this front camera's not too great. He's an Imperial Fist Last Cannon Sergeant. So he's going to be getting some decals on his shoulder pads there. The other thing that makes it a little bit easier is, until I'm completely finished with these miniatures, and because they've also got a very different colour for the shoulder pad, I generally only blue tack them on. So that's the other thing you can do, is just blue tack your shoulder pads on until you're completely done decaling them. It might be a bit easier to do than putting it onto the model and doing it that way, but it really doesn't make much difference, I don't think. So you got that. Knife, scalpel, either one works. Generally the scalpel's great for positioning stuff on it, and as long as it's sharp, and this one's not really sharp anymore, you can cut the decals out as well. You really want to have something super duper sharp, which is why I've got this one here, to sort of cut these decal sheets out with, or else you'll tear them and all sorts of different things. So the other thing is that when I'm cutting my decals out, I'll have a little tray to put them in so I don't lose them, so you can kind of see the decals there. It's the Imperial Fist Legion one, and there's a Roman numeral 7 that keeps sliding away. Generally, before I decal a full squad or a tank or something like that, I'll go through and select all the decals I want, work out where I want to put them. Then I'll cut them all out, because once you start messing around with the setter and the water and the rest of it, it becomes a bit of a pain in the ass to try and stop and go back to it. So that's something that's worth remembering. And then the last thing you're going to need is something like this, which is basically a wet palette for painting. I generally use kitchen towel. I think this is toilet paper because during Christmas we've run out of towel. But anything like this works. Little Tupperware container lid. Put some water in it and make it nice and spongy. So all that's going to happen is the decals are going to sit in here and come off their backing and activate. And you just want to be able to pick the decals up. You don't want to put them straight into water on top of stuff. I've seen people do it. It's just a bit hard to fish them out of all the water. So this is a good way to do it. It hasn't really upped the activation time or anything like that. So yeah, that's pretty much what you need. Miniature, setter and softener, wet palette, something to put your decals in, your decals, decal sheet. So 2 seconds and we'll be back and I'll show you how to actually put these onto a miniature. Okay guys, so I just decaled one shoulder pad and filmed that, but I actually managed to drop the decal halfway through, which wasn't very professional. Neither's telling you right now, but I don't get paid, so I'm technically not a professional. So what I'm going to do is show you how to do this shoulder pad, because it probably is going to make me look like less of a dickhead doing this. Okay, so once again, we've got a knife here, or scalpel here. This one's pretty blunt. You don't want blunt scalpels. I need to change the blade on it, but it works for positioning decals, but isn't great for cutting them, which is why I've got this bad boy here, nice and sharp. This is the tray that the decals were in before I chucked them in on the wet palette to activate. We've got the softener, which doesn't really need to be here for the moment, and the setter is what we're going to be using mainly here. And if I just show you this one here, that's probably activated by now and sliding around the place, but that's good. It can sit there for a little while. It's not going to get damaged. So we're going to grab the setter. What I love about this brush here is I don't need to waste a brush on doing this stuff. All right, so whatever we're going to do, we're going to put the setter onto the surface that we want to put the decal on. So this is kind of a bit like a glue, I guess, for decals. It's probably worth varnishing the surface first, so it's a nice flat surface and the decal moves really well. I don't always varnish because I don't find using these products that you need to. Also, the Forge World decal sheets are pretty good, so I don't think that you really need to do it, but for the best finish, definitely do it. If I was doing like a big tank with the big, hang on, I'm just grabbing the sheet for you. If I was doing a tank or like a standard bearer or something like that, I'd definitely be varnishing everything. Individual shoulder pads, I don't find you need to. So that's got a nice coating of the setter on it, so that can go off to the side. Now, this little guy in here is activated, so as you can see, he's sliding around on his backing. So all you want to do is you want to slide him off the backing, get the knife behind it, and just very gently, these will split. These are really thin. They are thinner than paper, guys. They will tear, they will crinkle up. So it's just a knack. I generally find you slide it off one edge, get the knife, the very tip of the knife under it, and then you pick it up. Once you've got it picked up, as you can see, no, it doesn't want to focus on that, so it's not going to work. We'll just put it straight on. So he's got the setter on his shoulder pad already. And now it's a case of, I find turning the model is easier than fucking around with the decal. So we're going to put that guy right on. And then move him into place once he's on the shoulder pad is generally the easiest way to do. So as long as it's up the right way when you put it on the shoulder pad, you can move him around on that setter really gently with the tip of the knife there. And he'll sit on really well. But as you can just see, it doesn't take much to bump it and send it flying off. Now, the big thing with Space Marine shoulder pads is you're going to be decaling a lot of these if you're playing Space Marines, obviously. A lot of other 40k, 30k stuff is also curved surfaces. And with flat decals, that's a bit weird. What you've got to do is, like on this one here's not too bad, but I did do it on the other one. Is you get a really sharp knife and you just slice the very top of the decal. Just sort of press the knife onto it. It'll just pop the top of the decal open and it will sit flatter. But once you put the softener on, it will also melt it to the right shape. So once you've done that, it's on the shoulder pad where you want it. And as I was saying before, it's really easy to line up on the Mark IIIs because that middle bump there is the middle of the shoulder pad. Run another layer of setter over the top just to glue that in place on that shoulder pad. All right, and then you're probably waiting 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes. The longer you wait, the better it probably is, before you put the softener on. So what we'll do is I'll stop the video here, and then I'll come back and we'll put some softener on it. Okay, so we've given this quite a few minutes here now to set. So I'm going to be doing this one here. So this one's super easy. Is you just want to make sure that there's none of the set is still liquid, that's all dried on it after the second coat, and then we just grab the softener. Now you can be a bit more sparing with this being a solvent. You can go back in and do it a second time. As I said, you can leave it for a few hours and come back. And then you just wipe this over the miniature. Now, you really only want to get this on the decal. Like, the rest of the pad's okay, but if you put a ton of it on, it could possibly melt some paint off. I've never really had the problem myself, but yeah, that's pretty much it there. That's covered with that. Now, one thing to note is that depending on how long it takes to dry, this can make your decals look really crinkly and things like that. Don't stress, that's just part of the process. Give it a good 12 hours and it'll almost look painted on. This guy over here is still a bit wet. No, he's probably pretty good. I can do this shorter pad as well. Cover that. There you go, and we're pretty good to go there with him. You can now hit him up with some varnish or whatever you want to do once that solvent's set. The four-draw decals are really good. You're not really getting rid of like any sort of film around the outside on the four-drawed ones. They're really good. The older decals Games Workshop were notorious for it. You need 4 or 5 coats of the softener to sort of get rid of it, but that literally just melts that into the model there. And will make it look really schmick. Well, already looks really awesome. And my big thing with decals is, a lot of people have heard me say that my favorite type of miniature is one that's done. And I find that, whacking a few, doing a bit of a paint job on it, putting some decals on and whatnot really makes it feel done. This guy obviously needs his base doing. That's the last thing that goes on with some more weathering and whatnot. And as I was saying before, generally your decals go on before your weathering goes on. You can't chip decals unless you're using a brush, a knife. You got to cut them up or just paint over the top. So guys, thanks for listening. It's the first Loaded Dice hobby tips video here. Hopefully it's been helpful, and you'll see a few more over the next few days. Thanks guys.